Welcome, episode 4, Joe and Graves podcast, English final. Here we go.
Today we're talking about 2 books, Moby Dick and Three Musketeers.
Three Musketeers. I'll start by giving a small summary of mine. So there was this little boy, and he grew up, and his dad taught him how to sword fight, and he always dreamed of being a musketeer, right?
Right.
And so his name was D'Artagnan, and he traveled far to meet these musketeers so he could become one. And his dad was like, I'm gonna give you a horse so you can get there. So he gives him a horse, and he starts trotting along, and there's a few skirmishes, but he wins all but one of them, but the guy spares his life in the one. And he continues on his way with his horse. He eventually trades his horse, which is the one thing that reminded him of his father, and he actually later regrets that. But he meets up with those 3 musketeers, and they all have one glaring weakness, right?
Right.
And so they get sent on a mission to basically avenge the king, because the cardinal was being a mean guy, right? And so on that mission, they're going for it, and D'Artagnan is the only one that's actually really headstrong, correct? And the other 3 get distracted by 3 mistakes that they're all kind of encapsulated by in the book. And one is drinking, one is women, and the other is just, I believe it's laziness. And as they're going on this journey, they all get trapped into that, and D'Artagnan helps pull them out of that and gets their head back on straight, and then get focused back on the prize. And eventually he saves them. They beat the bad guys, classic fairy tale ending. They kill the bad guys. That's basically the whole book. And I really enjoy that this book was French. It made me have a big appreciation for that French culture.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to that later, but first I'd like you to summarize your book.
Yeah. So I read, as I mentioned earlier, I read Moby Dick. It starts off with Ishmael, who's a school teacher, and he's the narrator, kind of main character of the story. And he's an experienced sailor, but never has gone whaling before, and he wanted to do that as kind of an experience outside of teaching and just an adventure per se. And aboard the ship, he meets 2 of the main characters on the ship is Queequeg and Ahab, and Ahab's the captain. He's one-legged, pretty roughneck,
Got it.
Yeah, cutthroat dude. And then Queequeg is his friend, a tattooer, and he's a harpooner on the boat. And basically they go along and they're doing well, killing lots of whales, sail the world, basically. And then disaster strikes with a typhoon, which wipes out their fleet. And then they kind of regroup, rebuild, and then they meet the white whale, which is kind of Ahab's nemesis. He speaks of it earlier. And then the white whale kills the whole fleet again. And Ahab, in a last effort to kill the whale, jumps off, harpoons it, but then drowns right after. And then Ishmael's the lone survivor, grabbing onto his friend's coffin, which is pretty crazy. And then he's the only survivor, and then he tells the tale of the ships and the adventure.
Got it. I've actually never read that book. That's interesting to hear, because you hear so many people referring to it in classic
Right, it's
novels.
a really renowned book, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised I haven't read that, because I'm
right. That's why I kind of looked into it. I read it early on. Well, I started reading it over the summer, and then I finished right at the beginning of the school year.
Got it.
So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really had no knowledge on it, but it makes you wonder why would that be a classic book?
Right. I mean, it's well written, obviously, and timely, and there's different pieces of culture. I mean, whaling is a big piece of culture for many different parts of society, and we've definitely went away from that just because of the malpractice and all that. And
there's so many regulations now.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, especially native tribes, even from Oregon, wherever, Alaska. But yeah, across the world, whaling's like definitely been a thing, like a resource.
Yeah,
Those places.
it's weird because we have such like different books. Yours is almost a tragedy.
Right.
without
Yeah.
the
The
people
ending
dying,
is
yeah.
definitely not like the classical like fairy tale
Yeah,
happy ending. It's
which I
pretty
think,
pretty like glim and
yeah, it seems like a lot of the like classic novels, American novels, are ending in like really tragic ways. Which
Right.
this has.
I think that's what makes it like more of a classic is that it's not just
fairy
fairy
tale.
tale.
Yeah,
Like it's more human.
yeah,
If that makes
yeah.
sense.
It like makes you relate with it almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, which in complete contrast to that would be the Three Musketeers, where there is a big bad guy and he's like doing terrible things that
Right.
really we don't see a lot in culture, and then they go do things which also we don't see much just happening day to day in culture.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, we should. Three Musketeers
it's
is a
somewhere in the way
renowned book.
that there's like the typical story curve where like someone on the outside joins a crew,
Yeah,
and then there's like the main enemy or whatever from like the crew is what it seems like. Like
Yeah.
the Musketeers have their enemy, and Ahab and the crew has the white whale
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
encountered. But
yeah,
the ending's the main. Yeah.
yeah. I actually, after I read the Three Musketeers, I was very fascinated by the French culture that, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I was just reading about, and I looked into like the history of the church and the like
Yeah.
papacy and the like actual leadership, the kings and the queens, and at this point in history, the church actually had like more influence over the country than the like
Right.
the hierarchy of the government,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is why the king actually had,
like he would feud with the Pope. And,
yeah, it was actually the cardinal at that point that was
Okay.
like the king was terrified of, and that's actually the Three Musketeers were hired by the king to go screw up the cardinal's like plans. But yeah, it was interesting to see that church back then was so much more like influential than it is now.
Right.
And yeah, I like that, but I also thought there's a reason they went away from it, and that's
Mhm.
because like the cardinal was being a bad guy. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, like the church can be as corrupt as anything.
Yeah.
Ideals and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we're all humans. That's,
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but just
Mhm.
the reality.
But yeah, French culture is really interesting. Outside of like the French Revolution, I don't know a whole lot about it, but that's something
Yeah.
that I'd be intrigued.
Yeah,
to learn more
the French
about.
Revolution, honestly, like,
It was insane.
it was
Yeah.
awesome. Like Robespierre, have you heard of him?
Robespierre.
Yeah, he was the guy who, so he had a guy, basically, like the guillotine. He had a guy
Right.
invent the guillotine, and
Okay.
they were like good buddies. And then the guy who invented the guillotine, right? He literally said like one bad thing about Robespierre, and he killed the guy
And he
who
killed him
invented
with
the
the
guillotine on the
guillotine.
guillotine, which was
Yeah.
slightly ironic and like I
Yeah.
don't know. Robespierre was just a bad guy, but eventually
Right.
Robespierre was killed on the guillotine, so that was like
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
cheered for that
And
day.
Henry VIII was also insane.
Oh
he
yeah,
had, like-
he was England though, but yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah.
He was like, what? I think by the end of his life, he had what, like oozing stuff out of his leg, and what did he have, like
Well,
six,
he had
seven
like
wives?
8 wives or
Yeah.
something, and I think all of them died on the guillotine, or a lot of them.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, that was pathetic. He was not a good
Yeah.
ruler.
Yeah, I kind of associate those together because
Yeah.
of just the
Yeah, they were
The
close
guillotine.
in. They were close
Yeah,
in
close in
time
period.
period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Another thing that reading the Three Musketeers reminded me of was actually like it just kind of reminded me of like an immigrant trying to like
Okay.
make his way through
Try to
society,
integrate
right?
and-
Because D'Artagnan was like, when he first met the Musketeers, they actually didn't like him.
Okay.
They were like, "What the heck is this like?" Like, just imagine like a freshman comes in on the basketball team and he's like,
Right.
"Hey, I want a spot on the team." Like the seniors are all like, "No."
Yeah.
they don't like
and they're
that.
French.
Yeah,
like little
yeah, they're
snobby
French, or
ones.
they're
Yeah.
like, "No, no."
Yeah.
And so like, when they saw that, they were like, "Oh, please no." And so then, I don't know. We just kind of
He, like,
see
kinda
that with
had to earn his respect.
yeah, and we see
yeah.
that a lot with like immigration. Like the people
Yeah.
come in and they're just like, "No, I don't want that." Like we all fall into that. Like
Yeah.
we're all the seniors on the basketball team.
Right.
at
They
some
come
point.
in like our immigration policies are pretty
Yeah.
strict,
Yeah, and,
and
so
like they come in and work for it, and then have to prove themselves again almost.
and once they work for it, they
Yeah.
get the respect. Like, the respect is given where respect is due. But it's really interesting to see like
yeah.
that that correlation of
Yeah.
like, not that he was an immigrant, although he sort of was because he was from far away, but he wasn't.
But still within French.
He
Like,
was
he
still
didn't have
French.
to learn a culture.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
more a way of life than a culture, but similar. Yeah.
Yeah, big time. And actually, the immigration at that point was not as much like skin color, because in Europe everyone's
Right.
white, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
like in America, like you can tell when someone's immigrated because
But
of
there's still a lot of racism within cultures.
because people
not
were
as much.
proud of where they were from,
Right,
so
yeah.
they would like gallivant about
Yeah.
what it was,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then people
And
would
feel
be-
threatened almost when.
when people
Yeah.
would gallivant, they'd be like, crap, like I don't like that.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, I'm French. And then
Mhm.
another person would be like, well, I'm German. And like, I don't know, it was just like, let's have a sword battle. Like, it was just weird. Its times were so much different. And whether it was better or worse is for.
Yeah. During
Yeah.
those times, like, well, until recently, I feel like the regard for your own life
Yeah.
was a lot lower. Like, it was just all about gaining respect, and
Yeah.
if that meant dying with respect, then people were more
Yeah.
likely to do that. Versus now, it's like
Yeah. Actually,
more cowardly in ways.
the shift in culture from respect to like comfort is
Yeah.
actually crazy.
Yeah,
Because now,
yeah, I've thought about that a lot,
Yeah.
especially like you read about like Roman history or just any ancient history. Really, I mean, it's more likely that you'd see a warrior die with respect than
yeah.
live. And,
Like you
live
never
a
hear about
comfortable
people like
life.
running away, right? Like
Yeah.
in
And if they do, they're shamed for it and like
yeah,
killed within their own ranks.
yeah.
Yeah.
And nowadays, if you run away, if you like escape,
But you save your men, like that's more
That's-
respected
yeah.
than
then just going
than
out with a bang.
going out underarmed and even winning but losing almost all your troops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
I think
Preserving
for better or
life
for
is
worse,
good, but
yeah, there's aspects to both. But
yeah. Like I'm not really condemning the
yeah, I think saving lives, like especially in situations where it's not like we don't have to be in those wars. I feel like that's one shift too.
yeah,
But
also just like it's so like cool and tough, and you
Yeah,
can just go
yeah.
out with a bang. Like
there's definitely, I mean, they fought for their respect, and I think, all the respect to them. So
yeah, that's awesome. I really like even Japanese like kamikaze, like
right, yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
even I mean
it's
It's
not, I
not-
wouldn't recommend.
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
War's just gotten crazy now.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it's
even-
all automated too,
Yeah.
like everything else. So you could be sitting like 100,000 miles away, taking
with an Xbox controller controlling
Yeah.
a drone that's like
Yeah.
killing 50
taking
people.
lives, yeah, dropping bombs.
Which takes away all the like feeling.
It
like,
takes away the morality more
Yeah.
too, I think.
yeah,
like-
it's like a video game.
Right, like you're so disassociated from the war that you don't really see the effects that it has on
Yeah.
your own troops and theirs.
Yeah, because when you're
Or
like actually in the
civilians,
plane
yeah.
and you see the bombs killing people, you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
just did that.
Yeah.
Like
But
when
if
it's
you're
just on a
hundreds
screen.
of thousands miles away, I mean, you're not going to feel the effects and the harm they'll have on their culture and their civilians. And everything.
Yeah, which is great for preserving your own lives, but it's also so
Detrimental to
terrible
theirs,
for just even our minds, I think.
Yeah, I think
Just killing
being-
people
it's-
without
it makes
even
us less
regret.
human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't know. I understand it, but it's still.
Right.
It's just technology's
It's crazy.
taking us places I don't know if we want to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Like even AI, like
I mean, yeah,
ChatGPT,
there's
like even the Apple
Things about it that
Intelligence,
can be
the Apple
yeah.
Intelligence we're having on our phones and all that. Like
right.
I can write a 100-page essay in like 10 seconds. Like what is up with that?
Yeah,
Like that's
Yeah.
scary.
yeah.
I mean, do we really even need like?
There's aspects of it that are definitely helpful, but
Yeah.
I mean, just for humanity, I feel like it's kind of a threat almost. But
Yeah, I'm as a young person who's gonna like has a whole
Right.
life ahead of me. I'm actually genuinely worried about finding a job that's gonna get taken
Right.
by AI. Like,
yeah, because there's so much that can be done so much faster
Yeah.
for free.
Yeah.
Like how from a
Like you
business
can literally just look it up on
from
your
a
phone.
business standpoint, I mean, it would make no sense
Yeah.
not to utilize that.
Yeah.
And as fast as it's progressing too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, how long is it gonna be until the judge literally just looks up like,
until the judge is AI, like
Yeah.
just a fair ruling.
yeah,
No falters, you know.
Yeah. and
which
like
is-
lawyers, and
yeah.
they just like present information rather than
Yeah.
like
which is
actually
scary.
speak from a human standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
That's fair. That's for the people to decide.
Yeah.
But as for me, I'm not a big fan.
I would have
Alrighty.
to agree.
Does that close our
We're
podcast?
past the 15-minute mark, so I think it can.
We made it. All right.
All right.
Next time.